the broadcast, and as soon as the broadcast is okay, over to the chairman, Councillor Rosie Herring.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, councillors, officers, members of the public and press to this remote meeting of full council. Before we move to the agenda, I'd like to introduce my vice chairman, Councillor Tony Bagot-Webb. And should I have any technical issues and drop out of the meeting, Councillor Bagot-Webb will take the chair until I'm reconnected. So we'll commence the meeting and I'll ask Natasha to report any apologies.
Thank you, Chairman. We've had apologies from Councillors Breeze, Hal Davies, Cooper, Sammy Otis and Lofts. Thank you.
Thank you. Do members have any declarations of interest for items on the agenda? Do I take that as a no? Okay. Sorry, I've muted. Minutes of the council meeting held on the 13th of May 2020. Are you happy that I sign those as a correct record of the meeting?
Agreed.
Thank you. Shall I sign it here? Thank you. Under housekeeping, members are requested to ensure they follow the protocol for remote meetings. I'd like to remind members that this is a meeting that members of the public are watching and people can see us and into our homes. So please mute your microphone if not speaking. Turn your camera off if you need to move away from your screen. Use the raise hand to indicate if you wish to speak, and Natasha will be monitoring this and keeping me updated the order in which councillors wish to speak on a debate. And wait for me to call you to speak so that you don't speak over each other. When voting, we will be using an online poll, and I will let you know when you're able to vote, and you should vote either for, against, or abstain of the recommendations, and you have 30 seconds to vote when the poll comes up. The annual meeting, at the May Council meeting, I reported that we hope to hold our annual meeting in September. Following discussions with the Vice Chairman, Chief Executive and Executive Director Resources, I'm pleased to confirm we are proposing to hold our annual meeting on Wednesday, the 16th of September at 6 p.m. At this stage, we're not sure what format this meeting will take, whether we'll be allowed back in the chamber or not, and it will depend on government guidance and restrictions and local situation at the time. In the meantime, Natasha will send a meeting request to all members to have the date in their calendar, and the format and arrangements will be confirmed when we're able to do so. Officers are liaising with the chairman of the Planning, Policy and Regeneration Strategy Committee about a new date for the committee's meeting that's scheduled on the same evening, and this will be confirmed to PPRS members. Item 5, under public participation, there have been no petitions, but there are 3 written questions from the public that have been received and were published as a supplement to the main agenda. I will ask Natasha to display and read each question in turn, and after each question, I will ask the leader to respond. Members are reminded there is no debate on the question or response. Natasha, can I have question 1, please?
Certainly, hopefully members can see this, and this was circulated as a supplement to the agenda. So the first question was from Charles Askew, a local resident, and like all 3 questions, is addressed to the leader of the council. And the question is the leader of the council satisfied that all substantial complaints about the actions of council members and employees in respect to the preparation of the local plan version 2 have been properly investigated, and the results of those investigations have been made available to council members prior to the plan being put to the vote? Thank you. Hand over to the leader to respond.
Thank you, Chairman.
All complaints are dealt with via the appropriate process. As leader, I have no remit in the process. I have been advised by the monitoring officer that there is no good reason not to proceed with the local plan report as published at item 10. As of 5 p.m. tonight, there have been no complaints lodged, either using the member or officer complaints procedure. Thank you.
Thank you. Natasha, can we have question 2, please?
Certainly. Question 2 is from Terence Harty, a local resident, again about the local plan, to the Leader of the Council. Does the Council find it appropriate and proper to vote on the adoption of the local plan Part B when a serious complaint has been raised by a South Northamptonshire resident, which is currently yet to be investigated by SNC's monitoring officer? Has SNC made councillors aware of this complaint, which is concerned with the Council not following due process and governance in relation to that plan? Thank you. Over to the Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm aware of correspondence between a resident and the council that I've been copied into and that a resident has sent to most, if not all, members over the weekend just past. The email that was sent to me has been passed to the monitoring officer and I have no further role in the matter. The complaints procedure does not require all members to be made aware one has been received. That resident has been advised how to use the council's complaints procedure and offered officer help to do so. Yesterday, I was copied into an email from the same resident that said, and I quote, "With regard to your continued attempts to usher me down the cul-de-sac of following the complaints procedure, I have no intention of so doing." As of 5 p.m. tonight, no such formal complaint has been received. I and all members have been given advice from the monitoring officer that there is no good reason not to proceed with the local plan item as laid out tonight. However, should council resolve tonight to adopt the local plan, there is a period of 6 weeks which allows for any judicial review proceedings to be lodged. If Mr. Harty or any other resident or group wishes to challenge the legality of the processes followed by SNC, they have that option open to them. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor McCord. Natasha, could we now have question 3, please?
Certainly, thank you, Chair. Question 3 is from Ryan Yaskew, a local resident, again to the Leader of the Council, Councillor McCord, on the local plan. And the question is, does the Council consider that adoption of the local plan, described as years in the making by Councillor Roger Clark on the 4th of October 2018, is now relevant and appropriate to the area given? 1, the huge challenges which have subsequently come to light regarding the need for urgent action on climate change, including NCC declaring a climate emergency in June 2019 and SNDC's Climate Change Action Plan being adopted in May 2020. 2, the changes ahead locally in moving to a necessarily delayed West Northants unitary. And 3, the potentially hugely altered needs of the area in a post-COVID recovery. Given the above, does the Council not consider that deferring the adoption of the local plan to West Northants would give both flexibility and agility to the new authority, thus properly ensuring that the plan better meets the needs of the locality, given the huge changes that have occurred since both the plan's inception and the consultation period? Thank you, Chairman. For the Leader to respond.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As the questions in 3 parts, I will deal with them in turn. In part 1, climate change is not something that has emerged during the preparation of this plan, and national planning and other policies have required environmental impact assessments to be taken into account in decision making for many years. Local plans are informed by a sustainability appraisal at each key stage of plan preparation, and this was carried out by independent expert consultants. We are satisfied that throughout the plan preparation, as well as during examination in public, we understood the environmental, as well as the social and economic, which together with environment comprise the 3 pillars of sustainability. Impacts of the options and ultimately the final local plan as modified. It is worth noting that the proposed employment land allocations were selected in part because of the opportunity they offer for residents to access employment by walking or cycling or driving shorter distances to work. This does dovetail with the Council's environmental objectives. The Local Plan Part 2 will also have a requirement for new build houses to have an electric car charging point, again complementing the Council's Climate Change Action Plan. Part 2 of the question: there is no delay to the commencement of West Northants Council. It was planned to start on the 1st of April 2021, and that still remains the case. Part 3 of the question: the COVID-19 crisis is not over, and it is too early to draw any conclusions from it. The Part 1 local plan, which is the strategic document for the area of South Northamptonshire, Daventry and Northampton, is under review. The review is at a very early stage, and any changes required to a post-COVID landscape can and should be picked up by that review. The allocations on employment land that are proposed tonight do also have some flexibility of use envisaged that would allow things to adapt to changing economic needs if required. To follow the proposed strategy as set out by Mrs. Askew is, in my view, undesirable. One of the reasons for continuing to adopt the Part 2 local plan is to ensure the new West Northamptonshire Council will benefit from a comprehensive, up-to-date local plan. The overall benefit of having an up-to-date Part 2 plan outweighs the risk associated with waiting for the new council before adopting the plan. The existing local plan dates from 1997 and the Save Policies date from 2007. As these plans age, the risk increases that developers will challenge their relevance to current circumstances. To prevent unwanted, unsuitable and unplanned developments, an up-to-date local plan is essential. To allow SNC and eventually West Northants some degree of planning control, adoption of a plan is the preferable course of action. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor McCord. Item 6 on the agenda is written questions, and there are no written questions from members that have been submitted. And item 7, motions, no motions have been submitted. So we go on to item 8, which is announcements by the leader of the council and the chief executive. So Councillor McCord, again over to you. Do you have any announcements?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no formal announcements. However, I do think it's important that once again I place on record my thanks to all of the staff and officers who have stepped up to the plate in such a magnificent way in the response to the COVID-19 emergency that we've come through. As each week goes by, the focus tends to move from various departments within the council. In the early stages, there was a lot of pressure on, say, IT to help people work remotely. It then moved to focus on the revs and bends people to get monies out for businesses and administer the government grant scheme. Now there's probably a lot of focus on environmental health and areas like that as they're helping advise businesses in the unlock and reopening strategy and that phase of the pandemic. Everybody everywhere has been magnificent in their response, and I think we as members should be very grateful to them all. And I just wish to thank Richard, all of the directors and all of the staff, and I'm sure he'll pass that on, but it is important that as this is public, that we can actually put on record my thanks to all of them for the way in which they've responded. That's all I wish to say. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor McCord, and I'm sure all members would wish to echo those sentiments. Chief Executive Richard Ellis, do you have any announcements?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you to the leader for those kind words. And I certainly will pass those sentiments on to the staff. Just one item from me, Madam Chairman. I'm conscious a number of councillors have expressed an interest in understanding what our plans are for a phased reopening of the forum. I think the sort of motivation there was to really show community leadership and support for the local economy in potentially additional numbers of staff returning to work and, as I say, really sort of helping buoy up the local economy. So my joint update with the leader this week, which was issued today, has really covered off an outline of our phased reopening of the the forum, and just gives an idea on the stages we will need to go through to balance off obviously that desire to help support the local economy, but also to bear in mind the well-being and safeguarding of both our staff and indeed visitors to the forum. Obviously, we'll be providing a much more detailed timing plan probably within the next couple of weeks or so, but hopefully members have been able to read that sort of digest and that outline of the proposed reopening of the forum. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any questions to the leader or chief executive on their announcements? I don't see any hands up. No. Okay, Natasha, you haven't got anything? Okay. In which case we'll go on to item 10 of the agenda, which is the adoption of the South Northamptonshire Local Plan Part 2. Appendices 6 and 8 were published as supplements to the main agenda pack. Councillor Bignell, please will you present and propose the report?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillors, the Local Plan Part 2 will replace the 1997 saved policies and completes the statutory development plan for South Northamptonshire. This means we have an up-to-date local plan for the district, giving us control over new development. It has taken us 6 years to get to this point, and I'm proud to be associated with it at this time. Members will be aware that the local plan for the area is in 2 parts, with part 1 being a joint plan with our friends at Daventry and Northampton Borough. Currently, Daventry has an up-to-date part 2 plan, and the borough is currently consulted on its submission of their part 2 plan. When completed, this will give the new West Northamptonshire Council full coverage of up-to-date local plans. By way of a timeline reminder, this plan was first announced as being on the way back in spring 2013, when it was announced in SNC Review, a South Northampton Council publication that is delivered free to all householders in our district. Since then, the plan has featured 6 times in further editions of the SNC Review. In addition to that, over the last 4 years, there have been 11 press releases and articles in the local press. We ran drop-in sessions for residents at Bugbrook, Road, Deanshanger, Brackley and Toaster, as well as afternoon and evening sessions at the council offices for people to pop in. Councillor Clark spoke on Radio Northampton. The SNVB bus that tours the villages had displays on board. We published a 24-page summary document on our website, as well as engagement via the social media channels of Facebook and Twitter. As a result of all this activity, we've had over 1,200 responses from both individuals and organisations, such as our parish councils. I could go on, but I'm sure you agree with me that we have done our utmost to communicate with our residents over the last 7 years, and any accusations from residents of not having been consulted with them are sadly misplaced and untrue. This Part 2 plan has been a labour of love for the planners and allocates sites to meet local employment needs, as well as refreshing the village boundaries. These 2 important features provide certainty about where new development should take place. The plan also identifies local green space, which has been a controversial issue in some places, and provides many other important environmental protections to this green and pleasant district. The least controversial aspect of this plan is perhaps the one with the furthest reaching implications, to ensure new homes and other developments are built to the highest environmental standards. Now, I am proud to say the Planning Committee has been shown a particular interest in the green credentials of planning applications for some years now, and this plan cements that ethos. With regard to consultation and involvement, the Council has complied with government regulations and its own statement of community involvement. The Independent Inspector, in his report, specifically refers to where the plan preparation complied with the regulations and the SCI, and he included that it did. The Council engaged Council's advice throughout the plan preparation process to provide additional confidence that the legal tests were complied with and written in full. In every other aspect, the Independent Inspector either found that the plan as submitted was sound or was capable of being made sound with modification. He also found that the plan is legally compliant in every respect and I am sure we are all heartily agree with his findings. This local plan is the culmination of years of teamwork between officers, Councillor Anne Addison's Planning Policy Committee and members. And I would like to take this opportunity to record my thanks as current portfolio holder to everyone who's worked so diligently on it. I am delighted to commend the Part 2 local plan to Council and move the 4 recommendations on page 15 of this frankly epic reports pack. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bignell. Councillor Addison as seconder, do you wish to speak now or later in the debate?
Well, Chairman, thank you very much. I am absolutely delighted to second this proposal. Councillor Bignell is quite correct. Everybody has worked extremely hard and it has taken some time for this to come to fruition. So therefore, I would be very pleased to second the proposition.
Thank you, Councillor Addison. Does any member wish to speak on the report? I have already had a request from Councillor Hollowell and Councillor Walker. But Councillor Hollowell, would you like to speak first?
Thank you, Chairman. This is the end of over 7 years' work. I think it probably began in 2013 when Andy Darcy woke up one morning, stretched his arms, yawned, and thought to himself, well, what shall I do today? And he put in all of the groundwork to this plan, and him and his team, and he was ably followed then by Alan Munn and Jim Newton. And I think we should be very grateful to our staff who attended meetings, exhibitions, and goodness knows what else, everything that was required to put this plan together. If you look at table 1 on pages 16 and 17, it sets out all of the formal stages of the plan making process, a process which is handed down to us. It's not one that we make up as we go along. But it began with the issue stage and then the options and the draft plan and so on, to some extent culminating with the reference of it to the planning inspectorate and the hearings held locally by the inspector. Importantly, each stage in that process included a consultation. And that included parishes, businesses, developers, landowners, neighbouring districts, anybody, any man in the street could get involved in the process, make their comments, they could object to things or support things. Sometimes their objections would be sustained, sometimes they wouldn't. Planning is a funny process. It's partly based on democracy, but it's also basically a rule-based judicial system. In one of the parishes in my ward, they took it to heart. In 2014, they held a parish meeting with 60 odd people there, and that was purely to look at the confines. And they had 11 suggestions for changes to the confine. They had them up on an electronic screen and they voted on each one. They met again 6 months later. They'd invited local landowners with potential development land to come along and give a pitch. And again, they voted on the sites that they would support. One of the other parishes held a series of exhibitions in the village hall, and they ran a ballot on the preferred sites. And then later, because there was so much interest in the village, they knew their village hall couldn't accommodate it, they had to hold a parish meeting in the village church. And arising from that, the planning committee at their last meeting gave outline consent to a scheme for 22 new houses, including 7 affordables and a new access to the village school. And that all came about ahead of the new local plan, but it came about through the call for sites as part of that process. The plan that we've got before us now has been drawn up by South Northants staff and South Northants members. We all live in the district. The next plan will be different because it will be adopted by a council, 2/3 of whom live somewhere else. But along the way, there'll be 5 yearly reviews to make sure that the plan is still working and it doesn't need adjustment. The report on page 23, paragraph 3.6, deals with the process following the adoption of the plan. It doesn't explain what would happen if we don't adopt it. At present, we have a plan before us that has met all of the legal tests and has been declared sound by the Secretary of State. If we fail to adopt this plan tonight, everyone, including the large developers who all engaged in the plan, might feel that we have acted unreasonably. And that might encourage some of them to apply to the High Court for leave to challenge their decision by way of a judicial review. Even if their application was unsuccessful, South Northamptonshire taxpayers would still have to meet the costs of defending that action. If we fail to adopt a sound plan tonight, every planning decision will continue to be decided against the elderly and creaking save policies, which will be weakened still further because of the opportunity to adopt a new and more current plan had been thrown aside. South Northants will then be at the mercy of the National Planning Policy Framework, which requires us to grant permission to any sustainable planning application if the local plan is silent or absent. In other words, the whole of South Northamptonshire, including those parishes who gave of their time to engage in this process, will become an open season for developers. For these reasons, the plan has to be adopted tonight, and I have no hesitation in supporting the recommendation and the motion to adopt it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hollowell. Councillor Walker next, and then Councillor Manners. Councillor Walker.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Yeah, good. Okay, I just had to unmute myself a second. I fully support this plan, and I will continue to support it until somebody tells me otherwise. And Councillor Hollowell has explained where we've come from. We've all been down the same road, one way and another. But, and it's the but that I am concerned about, and probably people have heard me ask this before, and I will continue to ask it until I'm dead and buried in the ground. The South Northants local plan part 2, 1, whatever you want to call it. The but is that I want a question answered. How will MK Futures 2050 plan overtake, abut it and or destroy half of my ward, which it is talking about at the present time, namely Deanshanger, Wicken, Old Stratford, Cosgrove, Yardley Guardian and Pottersbury, in relation to whereas these particular parishes protected by our local plan? That's the first question. And I'm talking about the MK Futures 2050 plan, and I've read it thoroughly, believe me. I wouldn't trust Milton Keynes as far as you can throw them, but there you go. The second but, and I'm sure this is on everybody's agenda, if you've not read that as well, then you need to get your heads around it, is the Oxford-Cambridge Arc and the transit plan, whereby the transit plan will be cutting through our area. Now, what is it going to cut through, and how is it going to be? What sort of devastation is it going to be caused if developers come along and say, or somebody comes along and says they're going to have to pay for it, therefore the ARC and or the transit plan will go ahead? So there's two questions there. I don't expect an answer tonight, but I would request, one, it is minuted that I've asked the two questions, and two, that I get a written reply if someone is prepared to give me a written reply. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Bignell, do you wish to respond at this moment?
I will briefly, Chair. Thank you for both those questions, Alan. The MK 2050 plan is what I would describe as a very aspirational and glossy document. Whereas our plan is built on facts, not fiction. It's fully developed. And I don't believe that the 2050 plan, as they show, would necessarily go forward. Certainly not in the form it is. And I think our plan's a lot more robust in its construction and its thought than that 2050 plan has been thought out, is my initial reaction to that. And certainly I'll get Jim Newton to give you a fuller response after this meeting. But again, I would say the same of the ARC. The ARC, again, you know, I go to the occasional ARC meeting, and the ARC is just an incredible collection of people trying to create, I don't know the best way to describe it, lots of things in lots of areas. We can't really define the ARC, is where the ARC is. So again, the ARC is again an aspirational thing, and again I will let Jim give you a fuller answer, but I personally am not too worried by those two overtaking what we have voted on this evening. Thanks for the question, Alan.
Thank you, Councillor Bignell. Councillor Manners, do you wish to speak next?
Thank you, Chair. I certainly recognise the amount of work from officers and other councillors, fellow councillors, that have gone into this plan. I am a reluctant supporter of the plan, and above all, I do accept the need that we need a planning structure as we move into the unitary authority. I do think, though, the public consultation process in and around Towcester, specifically for AL 1, 2 and 3, leaves a certain amount to be desired. And I'm particularly not happy with the AL3 proposal. I think the strategic landscape has actually changed since the plan was sort of nearly finalised. And I think the rail gateway proposal, when that was approved, our thinking should have changed and should have been challenged more. And sadly, I don't think that has happened. The AL3 proposal will deliver sheds of a similar size to the gateway rail proposal, albeit in less scale. And I think there's also a question over AL3 in terms of the post-COVID environment, but that probably wasn't as part of that because of the timing of that. But I do think as an authority, we will live to regret the inclusion of AL3 into the plan. But given that we need protection, particularly in the villages, I am a supporter of the plan this evening. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Manners. Councillor Johns, I believe you wish to speak next.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Chairman, the Liberal Democrats will be voting to support the proposal tonight. We'll be doing that because at this stage it's vital to have an up-to-date plan in place in order to protect our district from inappropriate or speculative development and ensure that we have the development is plan-led. The plan is, of course, a compromise, as Councillor Manners has been describing. It balances often conflicting needs. There are elements within the plan that I would prefer not to see there, and these have been mentioned, some of the plans around Towcester for employment. But as elected members, we have to act as best we can, given the constraints of planning law. And also, residents should remember that this plan zones areas for development. It's for developers to make applications for which will be judged on individual merit and their compliance with planning policies. This isn't the green light to development across the district, even within the zoned areas. And I hope residents will understand and respect that. So whilst I share reservations, particularly concerning my own ward area in Towcester, I think on balance, we must adopt this plan tonight to protect the whole of the district. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Johns. I don't think there's anybody else. Is there anybody else wishing to speak? Oh, Councillor Dallin.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. I'm slightly delayed, I think, on looking at my screen here, but you can hear me all right. I'll go ahead. I would say that the one thing we have to bear in mind, this plan is through till 2029. We're talking about the economy is the thing that has to improve once we get out of this lockdown business and the pandemic. In due course, we hope it will. And the local plan has to think about the economic side of things. In other words, we have to keep our employment sites and we have to look for new potential sites. Of course, that is balanced, as Councillor Johns and others have said, by other matters. And as chairman of the planning committee, I would reiterate what Councillor Johns has said, that our job is to consider applications as they come along individually, taking into account the views that are expressed through consultations with local, parish and town councils, with individuals who have the opportunity to voice their opinions. And we also hear from such authorities as the highways, who will no doubt express an opinion on the planning applications to the north of Towcester, which have been alluded to. But Madam Chairman, this plan has been a long time in its construction. There's been much discussion within and without the council. And I very much echo the view that South Northampton Council should set the potential course for this district before it's eliminated itself next year. And therefore I very much commend this adoption of this plan tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dallin. Councillor McCord, did you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, the road to here has been long and twisty, as other members have said. I once described plan making as a game of snakes and ladders in which there are no ladders, just snakes. Each time we got to a point, a new directive or new regulation or a new piece of case law came along that required further consultation, further analysis and further delay. However, we're here tonight, and I must thank all those officers and members without whose efforts none of this would have been possible. To Jim Newton, Alan Nunn and all the policy team, I am grateful, and we must acknowledge the work of Adrian Caldwell and Andy Darcy, who both left the council but did an enormous amount of work to this plan in the early stages. To Anne Addison and all members on the Planning Policy Regeneration Strategy Committee, I thank you all. And to the three portfolio holders for planning that I've worked with, Rebecca Breeze, Roger Clark and Phil Bignell, who have all helped steer us to where we are now. Thank you, one and all. This plan brings our policy base up to date. It replaces the existing plan that is almost a quarter of a century old. We will now have an up-to-date suite of policies that complement the Part 1 plan and should help us protect our district and set us up well for the future as we transition into West Northants Council. But planning policy, as you all know, is perpetual motion. That Part 1 plan is now under review too, so the process can begin all over again. Members will note from their emails that some people are now waking up to the fact that there is a plan on the way. We've had many responses from those who were not asleep at the wheel, and many articles in SNC Review and numbers of press releases, as Councillor Bignell alluded to earlier. And those communications stated the purpose of the plan was to look at housing and employment land allocations and review all of our planning policies. I do muse that those who complain with generic reasons for not adopting this plan are just happening to be complaining about the proposals near to where they live. If you take the remarks about the north of Towcester allocations, the same could be said about relevance, post-COVID landscape, the need, etc. could be said of the Silverstone or the old Stratford allocations, but they're not, just the ones near where the objectors lives. The familiar cry of "not in my backyard" goes up. This plan gives us new policies on gypsy and traveller sites, raises the environmental standards, looks to the future with electric car ownership, gives proposals for affordable houses, allows for building within the villages and on its boundary if the right circumstances exist, retains village confines and reintroduces them to places where they were lost the last time round, which I know is important to many members. It's a plan that is pro-growth, one that does not seek to draw up the ladder behind those who are fortunate enough to live in our district. It's sensitive to our landscape and sets out an updated hierarchy of sustainability against which future applications can be judged. Now, most fellow councillors know that I take a pretty permissive view on planning matters, and I've debated this with them many times. As a nation, we live on about 10% of the available land. We uncover more land when the tide ebbs and flows than we actually live on. As a nation, we're just not delivering sufficient housing, and this is not the fault of local planning authorities, as there are probably 500,000 unbuilt permissions, but I'd like to see initiatives to prevent land banking, like applying business rates to all sites where permission is granted after a short time to sort out the detail and get started. This local plan attempts to balance the objectives of appropriate growth, sensitively located at sustainable locations with the least environmental impact. It is, in my view, a great piece of work, and I commend all those involved in its preparation, and I heartily commend it to Council. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor McCord. Has everybody spoken who wishes to speak? Any more? Okay, in which case, Councillor Bignell, as proposer, would you like to sum up, please?
Yes, thank you much indeed, Madam Chairman. Thank you for the debate and the support, and like I say, the thanks to everybody who's helped prepare this this report. And I propose, as I said, we take on block all 4 parts of the recommendation, and I would ask for a written or vocal vote, please.
Thank you, Councillor Bignell. As you've requested a recorded vote on this item,
Sorry,
may we ask Andrew Hunkin to read each member's name alphabetically, and then please indicate for, against, or abstain.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I will go through the list, and as Madam Chairman has said, would you please respond, and I'll move on when I'm very clear about how you voted. So Councillor Addison.
4.
Councillor Allen.
4.
Councillor Atkinson.
4.
Councillor Baggott-Webb.
4.
Councillor Baker.
4.
Councillor Bambridge.
4.
Councillor Barnes.
Come on, Barnes, eh?
Come on, unmute.
Put your microphone on.
Councillor Barnes, I can see you if you wish to put a thumb up instead, or down. Thank you. That was a 4. Councillor Bignell.
4.
Councillor Billingham.
4.
Councillor Budden.
4.
Councillor Carol Clark.
4.
Councillor Roger Clark.
4.
Councillor Stephen Clark.
4.
Councillor Dallin.
4.
Councillor Peter Davies. Councillor Davies was on the phone, wasn't he?
Councillor Davies is visible. He just needs to put his thumb up or down.
Right, I can't see him. So if an officer...
He's on page 2. He's going 4. I can lip read.
Right, I need to see that myself. If
okay, it's on page 2.
Yep, I see him there. Okay. Councillor Furness.
4.
Councillor Grant.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Harries.
4.
Councillor Herring.
4.
Councillor Hollowell.
4.
Councillor Hopkins.
4.
Councillor Johns.
4.
Councillor Loveland.
4.
Councillor Manners.
4.
Councillor McCord.
4.
Councillor Medina.
4.
Councillor Ord. Councillor Ord.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Pritchard.
4.
Councillor Rawlinson.
4.
Councillor Surgerson Brooke.
4.
Councillor Smallman.
4.
Councillor Tarbun.
4.
Councillor Townsend.
4.
Councillor Walker.
4.
Councillor Elaine Wilshire. And Councillor Paul Wilshire.
4.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, members. Do we want to specify? "36 votes for, no votes against, and no abstentions, and the recommendations are agreed." Thank you, members. We now go on to item 11, which is the local development order, and back to you, Councillor Bignell. Please, would you present and propose the report?
Thank you again, Madam Chairman. Members, this local development order is aimed at making it easier for our residents to extend their homes. Like the local plan, officers and members have worked together to carefully consider its content and implications. Like the local plan, this document has been subject to public consultation, and where there have been good suggestions from the consultation responses, we have made changes to the document. The local development order is an alternative to a planning application, aimed to be faster and more predictable than such planning application. It is supported by a design guide to make sure that speed does not compromise quality. This council rightly prides itself on exceptional high quality of new development in the district, a pride that is shared by both planning officers and us, the elected members. It is intended that the local development order operates for a fixed period to enable the new West Northamptonshire Council enough time to evaluate its success. Last week, the Planning Policy and Regeneration Strategy Committee considered the optimal period for the LDO to run before it has to be reviewed. And the view of that committee was that it should operate until the 31st of March 2022, giving the new council a whole year before it has to review the LDO. I would like to record my thanks to Councillor Anne Addison and the Planning Policy Committee for its diligent work to progress the LDO to get it in the form it is today. I am pleased to move the 3 recommendations on page 321 of the report pack, and that the LDO operates until the 31st of March 2022 before it is to be reviewed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Addison, as seconder, do you wish to speak now or later in the debate?
Chairman, I may as well speak now. I certainly support this and I'm very pleased to second this. I think what Councillor Bignell has said is absolutely right. Again, a lot of work has been put into this report by a lot of people. Good thought, good consideration, and well worth seconding. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Addison. Do any members wish to speak on this report on the local development order? Anybody want to put their hands up, or am I missing anybody? No? In which case, if no members wish to speak on the report, Councillor Bignell, as proposer, would you like to start?
Yeah, I'm pleased to move that the 3 recommendations on page 321 of the report pack are accepted en bloc.
Can we have a recorded vote, please, Madam Chairman?
Thank you. In which case, over to you, Andrew Hunking again. We'll go through the members alphabetically.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Again, I'll call out your name, for, against, or abstain. Councillor Addison.
And 4.
Councillor Allen.
4.
Councillor Atkinson. Councillor Atkinson.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Baggott-Webb.
4.
Councillor Baker.
4.
Councillor Bambridge.
4.
Councillor Barnes.
4.
Councillor Bignell.
4.
Councillor Billingham.
4.
Councillor Budden.
4.
Councillor Carol Clark.
4.
Councillor Roger Clark.
4.
Councillor Stephen Clark.
4.
Councillor Dallin.
4.
Councillor Furness.
Oh, sorry, 4.
Councillor Grant.
4.
Councillor Harries.
4.
Councillor Herring.
Do you want me to? 4.
Councillor Hollowell.
Do you want me to say?
4.
Councillor Hopkins.
4.
Councillor Johns.
4.
Councillor Loveland.
4.
Councillor Manners.
4.
Councillor McCord.
4.
Councillor Medina.
4.
Councillor Ord.
4.
Councillor Pritchard.
4.
Councillor Rawlinson.
4.
Councillor Surgeson Brook.
4.
Councillor Smallman.
4.
Councillor Tarbon.
4.
Councillor Townsend.
4.
Councillor Walker.
4.
Councillor Elaine Wilshire.
4.
Councillor Paul Wilshire.
4.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, members.
Thank you. We'll just confirm the votes. Okay, that's 36 votes for the motion, none against and no abstentions, and therefore the recommendations are agreed. Thank you. In which case we will now go on to item 12, which is the Business and Planning Act 2020 fee setting and delegation of authority. Councillor Bambridge, please would you present and propose the report?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This item is to seek approval to issue pavement licences for pubs and restaurants, to agree the terms for which those licences will be issued and to set an appropriate fee. The government is currently putting the Business and Planning Act 2020 fee setting and delegation of authority through Parliament. This is to permit licensed premises, that's pubs and restaurants, to basically set up tables and chairs outside those premises on the footpath to allow the serving and consumption of food and alcohol where it is currently outside the area covered by their licenses. This is to help those businesses increase their trade, in particular where, due to social distancing, they're losing sales due to reduced capacity within their premises. Previously, it was possible for such licenses to be obtained through the County Council with an annual charge of up to £960 per year, depending on the number of tables set out in front of the building. The proposal before us is for a charge of £100 for any application, which would cover the period of up to the 30th of September 2021, when the Act will cease to have effect. This cost doesn't, in fact, actually fully cover our costs, but is the maximum that the Act permits. The granting of such permissions, however, is dependent on consultation, and it is likely to only be granted where the width of the footpath is sufficient for pedestrians, prams, and wheelchairs, and indeed social distancing to take place safely. And therefore, we're not going to have a great number of pubs in the area and restaurants with such wide pavements, but one can foresee it possibly in Brackley and Towcester. So, however, I'd just like to say this is another step in our measures to help local businesses recover or continue, hopefully profitably, during the COVID situation, and also to give our residents the opportunity to benefit from these businesses. And I would like to record my thanks for the hard work our licensing colleagues, as well as our environmental health colleagues, are doing at the moment to help businesses to continue during the current situation. The recommendations are as set out, and I would hope that you will support this proposal. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bambridge. Councillor Stephen Clark, as seconder, would you wish to speak now or later in the debate?
I'll speak now. I'm happy to support the proposition. It will bring benefits to the districts and help the businesses to do that. Dermot summarised it perfectly for me, so I'm happy to support the proposition.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Johns, you've indicated you wish to speak.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I support the proposal, but there is a question about, is the fee in addition to the normal licence fee? And secondly, I was disappointed that Dermot didn't confirm that Towcester would be now getting a bypass to enable pubs and restaurants in Towcester to make the full use of this scheme.
Shall I come back on that, Madam Chairman?
Yes, please do.
Okay, your last question, like yourself, we will wait with bated breath for the relief road, but it's not going to increase the width of the footpaths in Towcester, so I think that's not relevant to this cause. The cost is a separate cost. Some pubs and restaurants already do have licenses to operate outside the front of their premises. This is for those that don't, and £100 is the amount that's set out on the Act. And if I may, Madam Chairman, I omitted to ask Nick Sutcliffe, our licensing manager, just to bring us up to date with this, because it's actually going through Parliament at the moment, and he may be able to update us on anything that's happened. I apologize for not asking earlier, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Is Officer Sutcliffe, are you on the call? Are you able to respond?
Good evening, Madam Chair. Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Yeah, good evening,
you.
everyone. Good to see you all. Yeah, just to confirm what Dermot has said, the bill it went to a final reading in the House of Lords on Monday, and just as this meeting started was granted royal assent, so it is effective as of now. So this is quite timely. There are a couple of amendments that the House of Lords suggested, which have been adopted by the House of Commons. One was that there'd be an obstruction clause in it, so it covers what Dermot was outlining, that we won't grant any permits or licenses to businesses if they cannot guarantee the pavement will be clear to disabled people, children in pushchairs, etc. And there's also a recommendation that as part of the outside area, if somebody does have tables and chairs, they have a section that is for non-smoking as well, so everybody can benefit from using the tables and chairs outside. As part of that act as well, which is not part of the report today, but just to keep you all up to date, because I think it's quite relevant, is they also agreed that all premises that only have on sales will now benefit from off sales, providing they have the area to do it up until no later than 11 PM or when their license ceases, whichever is the earliest. So that'll benefit some of our premises as well that can only use the inside area and don't have permission to use their gardens fully.
Thank you, Mr. Sutcliffe. That was really helpful to have that up-to-date information. Councillor Surgeson-Brooke, did you wish to speak? Had you indicated you wish to speak? You're on mute at the moment. She's trying to.
She's indicating no, Madam Chairman.
I think
I'm very much indicating no. I very much.
Oh,
approve.
sorry. Oh, Councillor Johns, you wish to say something else?
Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to come in a second time. My point to Councillor Bainbridge was a serious one. Councillor Bainbridge says it's not relevant, a bypass or relief road in respect of this, but of course it would be, because if we had a relief road, the A5 through Towcester wouldn't be trunked, and therefore I'm sure we would be at liberty then to use the Market Square for on-street refreshments and so forth, and some of the wider pavements within the town. But because it's a trunk road, there is no way that Highways England would permit this. So it is a serious point. I know it's lightweight in the sense that this obviously isn't going to happen. You can't create a road overnight. But it does again demonstrate how Towcester suffers, and its local businesses will now suffer, because we continue to have a trunk road going through a historic small town in our county. And I think that's a great shame. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Hollowell wants to speak.
Something for the future. And Councillor Hollowell.
Thank you, Chairman. I support the idea. I think anything that we can do to help businesses through this very, very difficult period, we should do. Just make one proviso, one request, and Richard and Andrew won't be surprised to hear me say this, perhaps. We are delegating authority to officers here, so I expect to see that appear in the scheme of officer delegation on the council's website. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can this be confirmed?
Chair, yes, I can confirm that it will be in the scheme of delegation, and yes, we can make sure it's on the website.
Okay, thank you. Do any other members wish to speak? I can't see any hands up at the moment. In which case we go back to Councillor Bainbridge's proposal. Would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think it's been pretty well covered. I'd just like to read out the recommendations, if I may, which are fourfold. To one, delegate authority to determine the issue of pavement licenses to the Executive Director Operations, with subsequent delegations to the appropriate Assistant Director, Health and Environmental Protection Manager, Licensing and Business Support Manager, and all direct reports. Secondly, to delegate authority to the portfolio holder for environmental services and the Assistant Director, Environment and Regulatory Services, to make any changes should the Act differ from the current bill, and to set a fee of £100 for all licenses, and finally set the length of the license to expire on the 30th of September 2021 when the Act ceases to have effect. And I suggest we take the vote on those en bloc, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bambridge. Members, we will now vote using the online polling system, and you will have 30 seconds to vote for, against or abstain. We'll just gather the results of that exercise. Everybody has voted and it is unanimous, and therefore I can confirm that the recommendations are agreed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 13 on the agenda, provisional outturn and capital slippage. And for this, we will be going to Councillor Rawlinson, and please would you present and propose the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillors, as we continue through these turbulent times, mixing the unknowns of COVID-19 and the creation of a unitary council, we can look back and see that the outturn for the last financial year resulted in an underspend of £457,000. This is, of course, subject to the finalisation of the audit, which we expect to be completed in time for the September Audit Committee meeting. Whilst we are ready, the auditors need the final figures from the pension fund, which we expect by the end of August. Whilst we have had substantial funds from the government already, they go nowhere near to covering the total of the additional costs and loss of income we as a council will suffer this year. And the short-term outlook is still far from certain, and further financial pressures would not be unexpected. It's therefore prudent to earmark the underspend from last year as a COVID-19 reserve. At the same time, we need to approve the slippage in the capital investment from last year to this year. This amounts to just over 3 million, but it should be noted that 50% of this amount just relates to two projects: the co-op purchase, which has just been successfully completed, and the Toaster Centre for Leisure refurbishments that were delayed by the COVID-19 pandemic and should be starting very shortly. I'm therefore very happy to propose the two recommendations in the report. Thank you, Chairman, Councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Rawlinson. Councillor Bambridge, a seconder. Do you wish to speak now or later in the debate?
I'll speak now, if I may, just to say that I fully support this proposal. £457,000 is a considerable sum of money, and it will help offset our considerable costs at the moment towards the COVID outbreak, and which is very important that we do support our residents and our businesses to try and make sure that the situation is as best as it can be. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bambridge. Do any members wish to speak on this report? Councillor Atkinson.
Thank you, Chairman. Looking at page 420 under 3.9, and it's about setting the council tax budget, but in amongst the screen there, it says, additionally, there is almost 700,000 remaining for the community grant funding for the district 2021. What happens to any underspend of that 700,000 if it isn't spent before we enter the new administration? And also, will the government still be paying New Homes bonus when we become part of that new administration? And will it come to, I presume it will come to the new administration and not to South Northants Council, which won't exist any longer. So that's a couple of questions.
Okay.
And yeah, if you'd like to answer that one first, those two first, please, Mr. Councillor Rawlinson.
Thank you. In terms of the existing grants process, that is starting up again, and we will work through the distribution of that in line with our normal policy. If there is anything left at the as of the 31st of March next year, then obviously that becomes an asset of the new unitary council. On the second part of the question on New Homes Bonus, the answer is we don't know. It could be that the government decides to completely abolish New Homes Bonus. It could continue as is, and it could be altered. My personal feeling would be that there will probably be a reduction in the amount, but by how much and what way, I think we have to wait till the government actually tells us how they're going to deal with it. And of course, yes, you're right that any New Homes Bonus payable from next financial year will go to the Unitary Council, and it will be up to the Unitary Council to decide how that New Homes Bonus is actually used.
Thank you. And my final question is, what is going to happen to our SNC reserves under the new administration? You know, we've built up a bit of a pot over the years we've been running, and I know what you're going to tell me. I feel that it's just going to be absorbed, but I'd like confirmation whether we still have any hold or determination over the monies held in our reserve account.
Again, it will be up for the Unitary Council to decide how that money is spent, but you know, we need to make sure that the Unitary Council has a sound financial footing going forward.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor McCord, were you indicating you wished to speak?
Well, I think Councillor Rawlinson has probably answered most of the questions for Bob. A few points, I think, on New Homes Bonus. At the moment, the national New Homes Bonus, 80% goes to districts and 20% goes to counties. But in a unitary area, it all goes in. So it'll probably just be another funding stream. It'll be much less easy to identify as it is in the way that South Northants have done it. I also would say, and I know there's a lot of work going on within the creation of West Northants Council to look at the early parts of what a budget might be looking like. But across the county, particularly the effects of COVID, there's going to be some huge bills that need to be paid. The government have been reasonably good thus far at giving one-off funding, but there's an awful lot of money now which is being sticky plastered over with one-off funding, which is going to become long-term liabilities. And there does need to be some sort of serious reckoning between council, local government as a sector, and national government in particular, about trying to make sure that the one-off costs and the emergency costs that are now going to become embedded into ongoing costs get covered and picked up in some way. So I think setting the West Northants budget is going to be an extremely difficult thing. It was never going to be easy, but the environment now that we're going to find ourselves in towards the latter part of this year is going to be extremely challenging. So I think if councils like ourselves, which have been prudent, can help in that, it will actually help the residents currently in South Northants, rather than having a free party for everyone. If you think there might be some money sitting around that we could that we could spend on some other project, I don't think anyone could realistically or in any serious way accuse us of being reckless with funds. But we're by no means clear of the COVID emergency at this point, and anything could happen, particularly in the second part of the year. So we do need to continue to be vigilant. And the proposals tonight about taking the underspend from last year, putting it in a special COVID reserve, coupled along with the monies that we've already had from central government, I think will probably just about see us through, I hope. But I still think that we need to have every penny that we can lay our hands on for what the future will hold.
Thank you, Councillor McCord. Councillor Pritchard, did you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You mentioned earlier on, and this was for Councillor Rawlinson, you mentioned earlier on regarding the purchase of the co-op site. Have we actually decided yet really what format it's going to take? Have we actually allocated any budget for the refurbishment or whatever we want to do with it? And also, where will these funds come from?
Sorry, Councillor Pritchard. We are working through proposals at the moment, and there is a budget in this year's budget for further work on the site.
Thank you, Councillor Rawlinson. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Do any other members wish to speak on this item? No? Okay. Councillor Rawlinson, as proposer, would you like to sum up, please? You're on mute again.
Right, sorry about that, Chairman. Thank you. The government has announced a package of compensation for fees and charges, which we may get more money from, but unfortunately they haven't given us any detail yet, so we don't actually know what that's looking like. And I believe today they were also talking about the compensating councils for loss of council tax and business rates. So, you know, as the leader said, we will probably be just all right, but I think given how volatile the situation is, we are certainly best to be prudent at this stage. So I'm very happy to propose both of those two as on the council papers. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Members will now vote using the online polling system again. You will have 30 seconds to vote for, against, or abstain. Just wait for the outturn. That's agreed. Unanimous? Unanimous voting for the recommendations, and therefore I confirm that the recommendations as set out are agreed. We'll then go on to item 14 then, which is the Standards Committee Annual Report 2019-20, and I believe this is Councillor Townsend. Please, can you present and propose the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm pleased to hear, pleased to see, as you can see, the Standards Committee has had a mercifully quiet life, and indeed we have not been overworked, which is really good news, because if we are overworked, then there's trouble. And this council has behaved properly, I hope, and you will see from the report, or the second part of the report, that the cases that have been brought to our notice, and all of them come from parish councils, and I'm pleased to say that all of them, I think, have been resolved satisfactorily. So we're pleased with that. And the committee feels that as we go into the future, it is important that we take with us into the new council a system which is robust. And we didn't feel that we as a committee were involved enough with some of these complaints and charges came up. So you will see in the second part that we have asked to receive a note to make any necessary amendments following comments from the committee before being recommended to council for endorsement, to ask the monitoring officer in concert with the chairman of the standards committee to review the standards complaints arrangements, so that the standards committee was more involved in reviewing the nature and connection of complaints, and to ask the monitoring officer to consultate with the chairman of the standards committee to seek to co-opt 2 town parish councillors to the 2 vacant positions on the committee. These are rather lapsed, and I think it is important, as we say, we go into the next council, that we do have up and running the requisite amount of people who can be used in settling any of these complaints. So I would ask you to, I think, just to note the report and see what we have been doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Councillor Hollywell, as seconder, do you wish to speak now or later in the debate?
I'll second, and I have very little to say, so I'll say it now, Chairman, if I may. So yes, I have pleasure in seconding the motion. Standards is an essential function of the council, but not necessarily a very pleasant or an easy one. In recent years, the monitoring officer, who is pivotal to the code of conduct process, has really shouldered almost the entire burden, along with the independent persons. I think we just feel now as a committee that we want to keep a more of a regular eye, to be kept regularly in touch with events. And really that is what this report is about, trying to set ourselves up for the next 9 months so that we can present a system which is fit for purpose to the new council. So I would ask members to vote for it. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hollywell. Does any member wish to speak on the report? Councillor McCord, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just wish to quickly thank all the members of the Standards Committee for their work. As Councillor Townsend said, they have mercifully light load, but nonetheless, usually when they do have to meet, it can be quite a tricky problem, a conundrum that they have to solve. So I'm grateful to them all, and I'm grateful to all members as well for behaving properly and not actually giving Councillor Townsend and his committee an awful lot of work. That helps. And thank you all, and I'm sure the monitoring officer will take on board comments made.
Thank you, Councillor McCord. Anybody else wish to speak? Nobody is indicating at the moment, in which case we'll go back to Councillor Townsend as the proposer. Would you like to sum up?
Well, I think if you can read the report, I would recommend that you adopt it.
Thank you. We will now vote on noting the report using the online poll. Again, you have 30 seconds to vote for, against, or abstain. I'll just get the results. Again, that is unanimous. Therefore, the recommendations are agreed. Thank you. Item 15 are the amendments to the proportionality calculations and committee membership. The Chief Executive has nothing to add to this report, which is submitted to Council for information and noting. Councillor Lofts has confirmed that Councillor Johns will go on to the licensing committee. I therefore move the recommendations and have a seconder in the Vice Chairman, Councillor Bagot-Webb.
Madam Chairman, thank you for that. To keep my comments short, due process has been followed in this review and uses the calculating algorithms previously agreed by this council. I therefore have pleasure in seconding this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Does any member wish to speak on the report? No, we just for noting then. Thank you, members. We'll now vote using the online poll. 30 seconds. We're getting very practiced at this to vote for, against, or abstain. That motion is carried. No abstentions, and it was unanimous. So we'll go to item 16, which is urgent business, and there are no items of urgent business. And I will now close the meeting and wish all members a pleasant and safe summer. And I thank you, councillors and officers, for attending, and I hope members of the public who have been watching have found the meeting interesting. And please stay safe. Councillors, please mute your microphones and turn off your cameras while the broadcast is turned off. Many thanks. Good evening.